Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast, The Doctor is In series, episode 295. I'm Chris Hadnagy, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC, the Innocent Lives Foundation, and the Institute for Social Engineering. And as always, as The Doctor is In series, we have our co-host, Dr. Abbie Maroño. Nice to have you here, Doc.
Good to be here, Chris. I'm Dr. Abbie Maroño. I'm the Director of Education at Social Engineer. I always forget what I do. As soon as it's my role, I forget. I get nervous. I specialize in behavioral analysis.
And not a good memory.
No.
But that's okay. It's fine. Okay, as always, these episodes are sponsored by our company, Social Engineer. A couple exciting things as we talk about 2025. We are back with the Human Behavior Conference in November. You can check that out at humanbehaviorcon.com. Have a really neat lineup this year. We're changing the whole format. We're going to have some speeches in the morning and then trainings in the afternoon. And our theme this year is influence and information security, how you can use the principles of influence to keep yourself safe and secure in a world that is increasingly less safe. So find out more information, humanbehaviorcon.com. And also I don't know when is this coming out? I don't want to announce our new website if it's not yet. March. Well, I'm going to tease you. There is a new website coming. I'm not sure if it's going to be available in March, but we had a whole new slew of services coming out on Social Engineer. I don't know if we've got a chance to talk about this, but Dr. Abbie had a chance to be an expert witness in a very high profile case. So we are able to now offer some consulting services and things like that you can check out on social-engineer.com. If you like the idea of social engineering, you should join us on our Slack channel. Every day there's close to 2,000 people there talking about all the different aspects of SE. It is family friendly and legal. So if that sounds like you can find the link in the show notes. And if not, just hit me up on LinkedIn or send us an email and one of the team will get it to you. Also, if you would, take a minute to go check out innocentlivesfoundation.org. Our mission at that nonprofit is to help law enforcement around the globe geolocate people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And I am really proud to say that we have done over 558 cases so far. We just got some amazing recognition from Army CID unit, which we'll be posting about that. And the work just keeps going, and we can use your help. We are a 501c3, which means we're a nonprofit. So if you want to volunteer your time or donate some money, that can help us with our mission going forward. So go to innocentlivesfoundation.org. And last but not least, if you like the music, if you're not on YouTube, then it is none other than the band Clutch. They have a whole new tour coming out in 2025. I say just go see them. They're awesome. They're going to be here in Orlando. If anyone's in Orlando and wants to go with me, let me know. Okay. Anyhow, if you like the topic from today, give us a thumbs up, a heart, a like, and keep your ideas coming in because that helps Doc and I come up with new subjects. Okay. Talking about subjects, what are we talking about today?
Today, we are tackling the bystander effect.
Ooh, this is a good one. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's start off where we always start off. For anyone who might hear this and be like, what is that? Let's define it. What is the bystander effect?
Okay, so the bystander effect, very simply, is a social psychological phenomena that individuals are less likely to offer help to, say, a victim when other people are present.
Why? That's my question.
There's three main reasons why this typically occurs. And that's diffusion of responsibility. So when others are present, individuals typically feel like it's not their responsibility to act because somebody else will. Second one is social influence. So we monitor the reactions of those around us to determine, is any intervention necessary? So if no one else is doing anything, you're kind of like, well, if there was a crisis, everyone would be in panic. So there's no crisis. And then finally, number three is the fear of making a mistake. People fear being judged for their actions, especially in ambiguous situations. So if you're not sure, it might lead to inaction. And this idea was popularized really by a case, her name, Kitty...
Genovese.
Genovese?
Yeah, Genovese, Kitty Genovese.
That's how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
In 1964. And it's a very popular case that most people have heard different variations of, but the report itself suggested that there were 38 witnesses during the time of her murder, a really brutal public murder. But that's not actually what happened. Re-examination of the case revealed that this whole widely accepted story of 38 inactive bystanders was a media fabrication. In reality, only a few people actually saw the events, and some did attempt to intervene, although unsuccessfully.
So, the study around this was really based off of kind of not a real story.
Yes.
But it is a real piece of science. So even though it's a horrific story, and it really is, at least it's something that led us to understanding.
Yeah, exactly. The story that really created the appeal and interest in this effect was fabricated, but the effect itself has been supported. For example, brain imaging studies. In these kinds of studies, it's shown that the presence of others can actually reduce activity in brain regions responsible for personal responsibility and moral decision-making. So when you're making a decision, you're considering that moral element, there's parts of the brain that are lit up, and in the presence of others, the activity is reduced. For instance, the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision-making and social behavior, shows reduced activation when in a group. So this really supports that diffusion of responsibility. And then this is such a fun study. It's a really famous study called the smoke-filled room. And I think it's funny because if you watch it on YouTube, it is hilarious. So there's an experiment where individuals will sit alone in a room and they fill the smoke. There's a door, and under the door starts to fill up with smoke, and nobody in the room moves. So everybody looks unbothered, and they're looking around to see, should I panic? Should I do something? and the room's just filling up with smoke, and they don't do anything. You see them for ages kind of look around and stay because no one else is moving. So it's a really funny experiment, but it does show that we look to others to decide, do I need to do anything here?
That is interesting. And, I can kind of understand like the third point, the one about like being afraid of doing the wrong thing. You're in public and you see what you might appear to be a couple fighting. And you're like, I don't know, do I want to get involved? Because like, what if she started it? Or what if this is there? Like you get in and now all of a sudden you're in the middle of a couple's fight. Whereas if we were hanging out and someone came up to you and started fighting with you, I would have no problem getting involved because I know that I know your situation, right? So I know that it would be okay for me to intervene. So that's an interesting one because I think we probably all found ourselves there at some point.
Yeah, there was a case in the UK where a young woman had drowned in a swimming pool. And there were other people around the swimming pool that had seen her. There were multiple people, and she was floating around, and nobody intervened for a really long time. And I was asked by Trisha Goddard to comment on this on the news because everyone was like, well, are people just selfish? Do people not care? And when you actually spoke to people that were there, a lot of their responses were, well, I didn't know if she needed help. I wasn't certain, and I looked to other people and no one was doing anything. So I didn't want to do something and, intervene or bother her if she was just swimming. So a lot of the time, I think there's a clear difference between someone who's swimming and someone who's drowning. But sometimes if you're not certain, you can kind of look around and not intervene. Again, that fear of making a mistake can be really heavy because there's a lot of social pressure, especially for people who are introverted. If you're really socially anxious anyway, intervening in a social situation that is ambiguous could be really scary.
Now, how has modern times affected this? Because nowadays it's more, you're more prone to see people whip out their cell phones and film a horrific event than use their cell phones to call for help.
Yeah, well, I think that probably doesn't change the psychological phenomena. It is shocking when you see people filming rather than intervening, but you only see the film of it really. Like a lot of the time you don't see what happened afterwards. Like if cameras are shut off, things like that, they might actually intervene. But what we can look to is we can look to CCTV footage. Because that's probably the best way that we can examine, okay, what actually happened, not looking at someone's maybe mobile recording. And what has been shown all the time in these situations is a lot of mobile footage is actually fabricated. Now with AI, if you see someone's reported, hey, this is the video of what happened, it's not actually always super reliable. So looking to something like official CCTV footage for research is a really good way to see how people actually behave when they kind of forget they're being filmed, so they're just acting naturally. And studies looking at CCTV footage show that bystander intervention is very common in real life violent emergencies and with higher intervention rates when more bystanders are present. So not less, but when more people are present, more people intervene. And this doesn't mean that the research before was necessarily wrong, because what could have happened is there has been a societal change. Maybe we were less likely to intervene in the past, but as we become more aware of the phenomena, we're more likely to intervene now.
That's interesting. So being aware that this exists, you can kind of knock yourself into critical thinking.
Yeah, but what's interesting is there is a bystander effect for sure. Say you see someone stealing or doing something they shouldn't, yelling at another person. If it doesn't seem violent or aggressive, and if say you're someone that is introverted, if it's not violent and aggressive, you might be more likely to intervene. However, there is some really interesting research on the ambiguity factor. So when ambiguity is high, people are less likely to intervene. When ambiguity is low, they're more likely to intervene. And this really is important when it comes to victim-perpetrator situations. Because when there is no perpetrator, let's go back to the pool situation, it's a little bit more ambiguous. Is she in danger? Is she not? When there is a clear perpetrator and a victim, so someone is hitting another person, the situation now is more clearly dangerous and urgent. So it can increase the likelihood of intervention. We'll go back to individual factors in a second, but the presence of a perpetrator is a really clear signal that this is a situation I need to intervene. So if the danger is ambiguous, so it's not that someone is clearly in danger, the perception of threat is lower. So again, that drowning situation, that likelihood of intervening can be reduced because there's the consideration factor of no one is necessarily causing harm. So is there really harm going on?
That's interesting to me because, assume let's change that story. Someone was in the pool pushing her under, right?
Yes.
Now it's clear, right? She's in danger. But now you start thinking, well, what if I jump in to save her and he starts drowning me? Right? What if this guy starts putting me in? So it's kind of interesting that you say it will increase the likelihood of intervention. Now, if there was a crowd there and I can have 3 or 4 people, helping me with that, now I'd be less afraid, right? Or that's all depending on the guy's size and things like that. But it's a fear factor thing, right? To wonder, like this, like you said, somebody's getting beat up. Yeah. I jump in, now I'm getting beat up too. That kind of stinks.
Yeah, because to save someone from harm, are you potentially putting yourself in harm? So there's that factor. And this is where gender dynamics can come into play. So for instance, if it is a domestic violence situation, men are more likely to intervene. But there's an interesting factor here. So men are more likely to intervene in a public domestic violence situation if other women are also present to observe.
Oh, really?
Yes. So if there are more women present, men are more likely to intervene. If there are more women present, women are less likely to intervene. But that could be because they believe that the men are more capable to help.
That's interesting.
Another interesting thing I saw in the research was when it's a woman-to-woman fight, women are more likely to intervene. So women are more likely to intervene when men are observing. And there has been some studies to say that it potentially counters the sexualization of women fighting. So another woman is more likely to come into play and try and break it up to stop it being sexualized by male observers.
Really? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't see it as a sexual thing, but I would be like if I'm going to intervene two women fighting, I don't want to hit a woman. So it's like, if they start attacking you, you're going to be now left with this decision to like break your moral code.
Your male thinking is the violence factor.
Yeah.
But the female consideration is often that I don't want this to be sexualized, so it increases their likelihood of intervening. It's really interesting. And another thing that I was reading in the research that will affect whether someone, these are individual factors. So again, when we talk about what we just talked about, those 3 factors, they're the average ones that are most likely in general. And then we're kind of now narrowing it down to more individualistic factors. So these are less widespread, but factors like someone's self-construal. Now, a self-construal is how we define ourselves in terms of our relationship with others. So if I have an interconnected self-construal, so it's intrapersonal, I'm connected with others. So I see myself as part of my social group. My belief systems are very group tied. If I'm independent, my self-construal is independent, not intra-dependent. I'm really, modern, and it's very like me focused. It doesn't mean selfish. It just means I'm not defined as much by my group identity. When we have that self versus other focus, it does affect our likelihood. So people who are more group focused in general and are more other focused in general are more likely to intervene when they think someone, whether they are in their in-group or out-group, they're more likely to intervene in general anyway.
Were there any studies done if a woman was abusing a man publicly?
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't see any.
Right? So if a man's getting the snot slapped out of him by a woman, would anyone intervene? I mean, I'm trying to think of that, my own situation. Like, I don't know if I would, you'd almost be like, oh, man, I don't want to emasculate that guy by stepping in and defending him.
Yeah, you know what is interesting there? That's my bias coming into play while I was doing research for this podcast, because I didn't think to reverse the roles.
Nice self-awareness there, Doc. Yeah, that's. I mean, when you were saying all those things, I was waiting for you to mention, men abusing women, and I'm like, oh wait, yeah. So I was curious if there was any studies done on that one. We'd have to update maybe if you find one to see if there's anything that indicates that they would, like, who would be more likely to step in, or would anyone? I think.
Yeah, what it does appear to in the literature is women to women violence, or women committing violent act, tends to attract a woman bystander. Men committing act tends to attract a male bystander, largely for the fact that if it is violent and it's a man committing violence, we're going to look to who is going to be most able to diffuse the situation, right? So if you don't think that you have the capacity to diffuse and you're a woman, you think, I'm going to go in and get hurt. If there's a man, well, he's more capable. Okay. Yeah. So then swap it around. Like you said, a female abusing a male. If there is a woman present, the man is likely to look to the woman as, you are more appropriate to stop this. But there may also be that factor of, I want to be a gentleman, I want to break this up, I don't want her to get hurt. But I would, based on the literature, make the assumption that the female is probably more likely to intervene, given that women are more likely to intervene with women and women.
It was interesting. Maya had a situation once, my daughter at work. She had witnessed a female coworker abusing, like physically hitting and abusing and berating a male coworker. And she came home and she said, it really bothers me. And I said, why? She said, because if it was reversed, she said, if it was a man berating and hitting a female, I wouldn't have waited 1 second. I would have a right to management. But I didn't go to management because I didn't know what to do. And I went, well, Maya, that's very great. Self-aware. I said, so what do you want to do? She goes, I want to report it. I said, then you should. And she did. And the woman got fired. And then afterward, the guy came up and thanked her. Said, thank you. I wasn't going to ever report it myself. So thank you for taking care of that. So it's interesting to think about that. Like, she even had a struggle. Like if this was roles reversed, man, there would have been not even a second. I would have been in management's office right then and there. But because it was a woman abusing a man, it was almost like, wait, why did he stick up for himself? Which is such a weird, victim blaming way to think, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is something that is reducing. in our culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that it will ever go away because there is a big biological difference between male and female. So we do have to be, and there is a huge statistical difference of women committing violence towards men and men towards women.
Yeah.
So people tend to focus on the bigger statistic. Doesn't mean the other statistic is not just as important, but I think there's always going to be a bigger drive towards that statistic.
Yeah.
And because a female just biologically doesn't have as much power in order to cause harm as a male on average, again, because men are just typically much stronger and bigger. So there is that factor, but it is nice to see that there is a change in society, not just in the violence sector, but even in the security sector. We're seeing now more awareness in general that women can be abusers and women can be scammers and women can be in the field of terrorism. We're now seeing papers coming out saying, you know what we just realized? Women make the best terrorists. So in all these sectors now we're seeing that women are actually very good at being the perpetrator. And it is positive to see that change, but there's still, like we said, there's a lot of change to be had.
So how does the bystander effect work online? Is it better online or worse online, or how does it work?
It's really interesting because it's cyberbullying. So does it have an effect there? Helping in an online environment is very interesting, and the research on the digital platform show varying bystander behavior because it's influenced by anonymity and the nature of the platform. So if people believe that they're anonymous, they are much more likely to intervene. But people believing they're anonymous are also much more likely to create harm. So when you take that and people's identity away and say, okay, you're behind a screen and no one's going to know it's you, you see both sides of humanity. You see people who really want to help, but they might be nervous, they might be uncertain, they might be scared, they might be really shy. Because they're kind and want to help, now that social factor's gone, they're the first to go and help. But people also have a really negative nature and want to hurt. You take away their identity, now they're going to go more. So again, it balances out. So you see a lot of good, you see a lot of bad.
I mean, I definitely see online when you have high anonymity, the amount of horrible things that people can say to other people. It's like shocking, the things that you see other humans say.
Yeah, negative emotions are much stronger drivers than positive. So it's like with reviews. It's much easier to see negative reviews than positive because it's more uncommon for you to be like, this was such an amazing positive experience. I can't wait to review it. Yet when we have a negative one, we're like, I cannot wait to put this 1-star review. And it just feels satisfying, right? Psychologically, like that felt really good. If you get that negative emotion out, it is a much stronger driver. So standing up for people is much rarer than bringing people down in an anonymous platform, which is, again, really sad to see. But that is, I don't think that will change. I don't think even when society changing. However, what I will say is people publicly standing up for others is increasing. Now, there are multiple psychological reasons of a lot of people want to be seen as someone who is kind. So they're more likely to intervene when it says who they are than anonymously because they're not really doing it from the kindness of their heart. They're doing it to be
hey,
like,
film me while I go save this person, you know?
Exactly. Kind of
Get
like
it on TikTok real quick.
like let me record myself doing something really nice.
Oh, I hate that.
And I have mixed feelings about those things. If I intervene and I record myself, there is the factor of, yes, I can encourage other people to do nice things too. But you are also benefiting off of someone else's misfortune. So I have mixed feelings about those kinds of situations. But again, that bystander effect of, okay, well, I can use it to almost greenwash myself. You know, companies do it. So individuals, look how kind I am, look how much I intervene, look how brave I am. But I wouldn't do it anonymously.
I am thinking about the reviews. I was laughing when you were talking about that because I have a 1-star review on my first book because Amazon delivered it and it got wet. Right? They put a 1-star review because the book got ruined. And I'm like, that's not even about the book. It's not like you said it sucked. It's like, my book came wet, 1 star. And I'm like, what the heck?
I have other authors that are like, the book didn't turn up on time.
Yeah.
Or, it was delivered to an old address or something like that. And it's like, well,
1 star.
Amazon.
Tell me about the book. That's
what I mean by the negative emotion. People want to get it out. So in a cyber space, there's a lot of negativity. Yeah. And that can translate to if someone's being cyberbullied. People also not stepping in because they're afraid to become the victim themselves.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, like where someone's being attacked and then someone even good-willed is like, oh my gosh, if I stand up for this person, that mob is going to attack me now too. I can understand the fear in that because if you're watching someone be brutalized so badly, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I can deal with that. So,
and it's really easy when we see people and say, okay, they didn't intervene, they're a terrible person. But there is that factor to consider your own safety. So if you see a violent situation, for example, say I see a man and a woman, they're shouting at each other and maybe it's getting aggressive or violent, I might call the police.
Right.
Would I put myself in between them? Would I try and break it up? No, maybe it depends. I go to the gym, but I'm not a big person, so I would not bet on me in a fight, to be honest.
But I mean, that's still, to me, that's not, that is still better than the bystander effect because you took action.
Yes.
Right?
But say the police take a long time.
Yeah.
What do you do? Because technically you're still just letting it play out. You have intervened in the future, you have made the call, you've done the right thing there. But from the outside, you're not really doing anything. So you can still have people say, well, why didn't you intervene? You call the police, but they're not going to be there. And what if it's a man? And we have a lot of shame involved when it is a male, because if it's, say it's me, and how I just explained it of, I'm concerned for my own safety, people probably at home like, yep, that makes sense. She's a young woman. She doesn't want to get involved in a fight. Perfectly fine. What if I was a man and I said that? What if the guy was bigger than me? Why, just because I'm a male, do I inherently have to get involved in the fight? But there is that perception of you should have done more because you're a man. Yeah,
100% agree. Yeah. So let's say you are in trouble. Okay, you're the one being victimized or something's happening. What should you do if people aren't coming to your aid?
Okay, so what you want to do is you want to think about those main 3 factors that stop people intervening, because you kind of want to reverse engineer them. So how do we get rid of those? So let's think about the main one, that diffusion of responsibility. You want to directly address individuals because you want to get rid of the diffusion of responsibility. Hey, it's yours. So make eye contact, look directly at a specific person if asking for help, and call out, use clear language. You in the red shirt, please help me. This reduces that diffusion of responsibility because it makes it very clear that you need help from that person. Yeah. And then the other thing, say it's an ambiguous situation, clarify the emergency, be specific. Clearly describe the nature of the emergency. Instead of saying help, say I'm being attacked. I've been injured. And if you can, explain what you need. If possible, say call 911. Help, stop this person. So, I need medical help. You with the backpack, please call an ambulance. Can someone help me? I'm in danger. You with the stroller, please help me. These kinds of things, you're reducing the ambiguity and you're making it someone else's responsibility. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you go through life-saving training, they actually teach you that. Like I was a lifeguard at one point in my young life, and they teach you that. Like if you're about to administer CPR, you obviously can't go call 911. So you literally point to someone in the audience and say, you go get the cops or go call 911, and then they'll do it. Yeah, because if Stan's wearing a red shirt, you go, you in the red shirt, please help. Yeah. And I go, well, someone knows. myself.
Yeah, right.
Now there is a different factor of,
Yes.
now I am just being mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, I've actually seen it before where I was in an accident once and this guy was hurt and I looked at someone and said, "Can you call 911?" And she went, "I don't have a cell phone." And then she turned and she got someone else to do it. So
Because
she didn't have it. Yeah.
responsible.
She was responsible. Then she goes, "God, you have a cell phone. You have it in your hand. Call 911 for this guy." Right. And now she became my advocate for it because she didn't have one. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's kind of cool when you think about it.
Yep. And that is a very different response than I can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she is instantly responsible.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to analyze those things when you understand it now and how it works.
Yeah. And it is really interesting too that it has been shown time and time again that educating people about the bystander effect reduces it because it makes us more conscious of our inactivity during ambiguous situations. Because it's not something you would typically bring to mind unless you know of it, because in that moment there's confusion.
Yeah.
So you're just kind of looking to other people. But if you are aware, when you feel that confusion, you're reminded, no, this is where people don't intervene and others can get hurt. So simply just having the conversation about, hey, this is a real phenomena. And if you're not sure, help anyway. Because what's the worst that can happen? You ask someone for help and they go, "I don't need it." And you go, "Okay."
Yeah. Like if someone had said,
Sorry.
"Hey, are you just floating for 8 minutes?" Or like, "What's up?" They might have been able to save that woman, right? I mean,
Yep.
That is a weird one.
Yeah, the worst is they just say, "No, I don't need help."
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Or the worst could be something like, if they get mad at you, you could be like, "Why are you bothering me? I'm sorry, I thought you were hurt," something like that.
I had someone, I was sat on a bench and I was looking at memes and I was laughing to myself. And I had a woman come up to me and sit with me and ask if I'm okay. She thought I was crying.
Oh.
She thought I was crying to myself. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Are you okay?" And she said, "I saw you alone here crying." And I'm like, "No, I'm looking at memes."
But that's at least she cared enough to come up and make sure you were okay.
Yeah. And, my response wouldn't be like, "What are you doing?" Approaching and asking if I'm okay. I'm clearly having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, your form of laughter must have really concerned her. So.
Well, I was trying to conceal it. But
well, that's probably why. Ridiculous. Well, as always, Dr. Abbie has a long list of references that we'll put in the show notes. So if anyone's interested in seeing where our discussion came from today, you'll be able to get that on the page. Next month, what is our topic?
I'm laughing to myself because the topic of next month is why we cry.
Why we cry, which is fitting with your ending story, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that woman, you can find her and you could tell her, "Hey, listen to this podcast,"
Yeah.
Well, this was a really interesting one and very timely, I think, with everything going on in the world today. So thanks for pulling this one up. And next month on Why Do We Cry? Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was fun for us to record it, as you can always tell. And stay safe. See you next month.